Howdy ho, Maplers. Welcome to my second weakest 250. And probably the second worst 250 I've done so far. We've finished Dark Knight, the OG, wonderful first 200 ever in MapleStory class. This class has not aged well. Oh my lord. I have never played a class up to this point where I feel like Frenzy actively deteriorates the quality of the play. Dark Knight does not handle mobbing well with Frenzied Spawn. It really doesn't. I did some testing for rates without Frenzy casts in some larger maps, and I was getting almost the same rates I was getting in like the best maps with Frenzied Spawn. It's pretty redonkulous. But as you can see, this isn't a very strong, this is not a very strong character. I didn't even break 200 clean stat. Part of that is due to moving my best warrior pieces over to my 0. So really what I'm left with is just like the okay stuff. The stuff that's good enough. This is really good though. The spear is more than pulling its weight. I wish they made another spear class. It feels like a massive shame to just leave that thing here and let it rot. Pendant of Spirit for the EXP always. Now I moved my cooldown reduction hat from my 0 to Dark Knight because really you need a cooldown hat. Your main mobbing skills are your 5th job skills, and they're just high enough cooldowns that cooldown hat makes a big impact on their uptime. It's very, very handy. But even if you don't have a cooldown hat, the cooldowns are low enough that you're still going to have them up enough that they'll be useful. Yeah, I don't have a badge. I was MVP Gold last month and now I'm MVP Silver. And I'm probably going to be MVP Bronze next month, but I just didn't bother getting a different badge because I lost it at 247 and I didn't need the damage past there. Pretty much okay stuff. Nothing really fantastic, but it got us there. Thank God Dark Knight was super strong. For the inner ability, you definitely want attack speed +1. Dark Impale is probably the second worst main mobbing skill in the game, right behind Blade Fury. It is so ungodly slow. It takes so long to just attack once with this skill. You need as much attack speed as you can get. It's so clunky. Buff duration is definitely what you want your second line to be, because for Dark Knight's bossing, a huge part of your burst comes from being in Final Pact, and Final Pact is influenced by buff duration. So the more you have, the longer you're completely invincible and you have a ton of damage. Pretty perfect. And then I just happened to roll a drop line on my third one, so I stuck with it. It was pretty good. For the V Matrix, as always, back on its throne, right where it should always be. Decent holy symbol. Maxed out. Always. It had a break on Bishop, but we had to bring it back for Dark Knight. For the actual Dark Knight skills, you have their best skill, Calamitous Cyclone. I'll preface this by saying this skill unfairly has a 3-minute cooldown. It is not strong enough to deserve a 3-minute cooldown. If it was like a 2-minute cooldown, this would feel way better for both mobbing and bossing potential. But as it sits right now at 3 minutes, it's pretty much just for your main burst, and it's not that much burst. It's strong, but it's not a lot of burst. Then for Dark Knight's best 5th job skill, in my opinion, just the one that feels the best to use, Spear of Darkness. It effectively works like Dual Blades Tornado, where it pauses when you initially use it and then it throws, but the throw range is like really, really long, which feels great for mobbing. And you can kind of direct where it goes by throwing at angles, but there's only like a few instances when I was training to 250 where actually throwing it at an angle was useful. Generally, you just throw it straight and it's great. Radiant Evil. This skill is so close to being perfect, but it's still not. Like, The fact that you need to have Evil Eye active to use the skill sucks. The fact that this doesn't refresh Evil Eye's duration also sucks. Evil Eye is such a tedious skill to keep up in order to use one of your main 5th job skills. But by itself, this is pretty much the best mobbing skill Dark Knight has. Usually one cast with Frenzied Spawn will clear at least like 25-30 mobs, so it's pretty darn good. For the boost nodes, Dark Knight really only needs one boost node. It's kind of like Bishop, keeping it simple. We like that. You need Gungnir's Descent, final attack, final damage, or actually no, I remember someone corrected me on this earlier. You don't want final attack because Dark Knight does not have advanced final attack, so their final attack only has a 40% proc chance. So instead of final attack, what you actually want on that slot is Evil Eye. Because that, for whatever reason, I think this is the first time I've ever seen this on all of my 250s, Evil Eye's boost node boosts the damage of Radiant Evil, the 5th job skill. It's so weird. I think that's like the first class I've gotten to that does that. But yeah, you don't want final damage, you want your Evil Eye boost node. And then for the last spot, you want your Dark Tickle. Dark Impale's much too good of a name for this skill. It's not good, but it's your main mobbing skill. You want it maxed. For the second trio, you don't really need it. Rush isn't really useful, but since Rush is getting changed into an up jump in the future, it's going to alleviate a lot of Dark Knight's rope lift reliance, so just having more damage on Rush would be nice. Maybe when you up jump with Rush, you'll kill mobs while going up. It'll be handy for mobbing. Nightshade Explosion, you don't really need it, but of the skills, it's the most useful one from your 4th job, because it's the most usable. Like, Evil Eye Shock feels really, really bad to use past level 200 because you can't cast it in the air. The range on it vertically is pretty small, so you're never really double platting with it, and its damage is kinda on the low end regardless. And then for the final one, I'd probably say just get final attack. Even with a 40% proc chance, it's pretty good. Then, True Arachnid Reflection, you get that from the Will storyline. Always want it. Decent Sharp Eyes and decent Speed Infusion. You don't really need decent Speed Infusion unless you're using Green Pot, but it's always nice to have. Rope Lift, probably you want this on as soon as you can get it. I put it on at 205 because Dark Knight mobility is pretty bad without it. Then, Urda Shower, it's pretty much a mandatory skill. Like, you'll want to put this on as soon as you can get it as well. It's a huge part of your mobbing, which is kind of depressing. Then Blitz Shield, also another really good mobbing skill that Explorer Warriors have access to, but the problem is, like for me, this skill should work like Radiant Evil. Radiant Evil doesn't have a cast animation, it's instant cast. The second you push the key, even if you're in the middle of using another skill, it goes off. You have to stand still on the ground to start the shield, and I have really bad ping. Like, really bad ping. So standing still on the ground takes like a full 1.5 seconds to cast the shield, so it feels really clunky while training. But the addition of this in your mobbing rotations definitely helps out, so you want it pretty much as soon as you can get it. And then character building 1, you always want it while training. Pretty much always. Even during Haste event, I tested out the rune version of the XP. You still proc character building more often than you proc the rune on a Haste event, if you're like actively moving around the map, because you're passing through so many mobs. For training, oh boy, ay. Up until 225, I'll give Dark Knight this. Up until 225, Dark Knight wasn't terrible. I trained an Eastern Cave path from 200 to 205. You know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And for here, it's pretty okay. Dark Impale has a decent vertical range for these early maps. And your rotation, you pretty much just want to drop Radiant Evil on cooldown there, and then just use your Spear on cooldown to clear multiple platforms. With those two combined, and with yourself just flash jumping left and right through the map, it's pretty good. And then when you're over here without Radiant Evil, just use Nightshade. It's tall enough that it'll hit the top platform, and it works out really nice. And pretty much like most classes, these early levels are super duper fast. No real issues here. You really just want to burn through these early levels so that you can get into Reverse City and you can get into the best map. The Hidden Research Train. Boy howdy. I still love Reverse City. It's so good. Now you'll notice with all of these, I'm not using my Lucid Soul because, well, a barely 20k stat warrior, your Lucid Soul isn't useful. Like, I'm pretty sure it's not one-shotting here still. When I was down at these levels, it was two-shotting, so I still kind of used it, but yeah, I'm still not one-shotting, bruh. Buff hero soul damage. This is a 205 map. But yeah, I'd set Lucid Soul there, or just use Radiant Evil and Nightshade on cooldown on this side, and then just jump left and right. You can throw the spear after rope lifting to hit all 3 platforms at once, which is really handy, and then just keep using Radiant Evil and Nightshade on that side. And the clear is pretty good. I stayed here until 2:15. Like, going long hours on this map felt kind of awkward because it really started reminding me of Dual Blade and how much it's reliant on its 5th job skills to mob for it, but again, you'll get through these early levels pretty fast. I went to Choo Choo again. Bad habits. I wanted to go to Yum Yum. For 2:15 until 2:27, because I ain't dealing with CLP. Too many people. Too many toxic people who like to KS. CLP, I avoid it whenever I can. For here, it's not really a great rotation. This is where Urda Shower came into play a lot for me, as well as Blitz Shield. You really kind of just use your big cooldowns and jump along the bottom. Because Nightshade can hit the top for the middle platforms and the left platform. Nightshade cannot hit that top right platform, it's just barely out of its range. So I generally cast Radiant Evil on the right side, and stuck to using Urda Shower and Nightshade when I was on the left side. As well, you can also jump up and cast that, and your spear should clear almost the entirety of those top 2 platforms. So for this map, it's not terrible, you're just relying very heavily on your cooldown skills. And then you can put Blitz Shield in the rotation whenever you get access to it. It's just another big AoE that you can add in to make the mobbing slightly better. These early levels, pretty good. It's not until you get into Arcana where Dark Knight starts to fall off really, really hard in the fun department. I'm gonna steal the map from Richard here real quick. I had to secure a CLP because it's just way too busy. For Dark Knight's rotation in CLP, there really is not a good rotation. What I generally did is I stayed on these bottom platforms and used rope lift to get myself up to spear that top platform. On cooldown, I would drop Radiant Evil there, and I would use Urda Shower and Blitz Shield to clear the AoEs on the sides while it's down. You just want to be using every skill you have on cooldown. And if you're still here past 235, you drop your will skill, and you just clear on through the map. But really, that's the main problem I have with Dark Knight. It has no good rotations because its main mobbing skill isn't good enough to actually make rotations with. So you're effectively just hopping around using cooldown skills, which feels like... It feels like Dual Blade. And Dual Blade was terrible. Thank you, Richard, for holding this map and letting me borrow it. Dual Blade was one of the worst 250s that I did. I had almost zero fun doing it because what I find enjoyment in for training is finding good rotations in maps for classes. And good rotations rely pretty heavily on your main mobbing skill. When your main mobbing skill is almost worthless, it is very hard to find good rotations that aren't just spam cooldown skills, because that's really what you have to do. So for me, everything past 235 for Dark Knight, and for 235 until 240. 245, yeah, I stayed here until 245 and then went to Moonbridge. I stayed in the Mirror Touch C2. This is another map just like the other ones, but it's slightly different. You jump along the bottom, and you clear, and then you just chuck your spear on cooldown, and jump back to the other side. Now at the apex of your jump, if Evil Eye is active. At the apex of your jump, you can drop Radiant Evil, and it will hit the top platform. So you pretty much need to always cast it at the apex of your jump. But that's effectively the rotation. You're chucking your spear, and you're just kind of doing a U pattern. And then you use Urda Shower on cooldown. You can even put Blitz Shield into your rotation if you want to, instead of throwing a spear. But there's really like no good flow to Dark Knight's training at all. And it wasn't until Moonbridge where I finally got a map that had good flow and gave decent enough EXP rates that I was able to stick it out. And even then, I had to rely so heavily on you guys on Twitch to just distract me from how miserable it is to be playing what is effectively Warrior Dual Blade, but worse. For 245 until 250, I did 2 main maps in Moonbridge. I did VC3, and I did Last Horizon 2. I'll show off the better one first, but again, it doesn't really have a good rotation to it. VC3 is a very congested map. It's got a lot of platforms and a lot of mobs on those platforms. So pretty much you just want to be spamming your AoEs as much as possible, and almost every time you cast an AoE, it's going to be hitting nearly max mobs. The problem is that there's like no way to loot this map efficiently. So you pretty much just gotta put out all hopes of looting the map pretty much ever. And then a strategy you can use is when you're on the top, just throw your spear backwards as you're doing a circle. And just keep moving in a circle. There's like no set place to ever put anything. You're kind of just jumping through. Now this platform here is really annoying, since if you're trying to do the circle, you're going to land on it a lot and it's going to stop your momentum. But you just got to deal with it, unfortunately. And as well, you're just moving in a circle. I really hate that there aren't good rotations with Frenzied Spawn for Dark Knight. It's as if they made this class specifically to train on base spawn rates, because a lot of the videos and like clips of Dark Knight that I watched coming into this character in preparation were of Kobe and other KMS players on their Dark Knights, and I'm like, wow, hey, this class has some pretty good options, has some pretty good skills for getting around the map and killing stuff. Everything works out pretty good for KMS. Once you start training with Frenzy Spawn, though, there's an issue. Dark Knight doesn't have tools to handle Frenzy Spawn at all. You realize pretty quick, Dark Knight has 0 map control. So you pretty much have to play Dark Knight as if you were playing with no spawn buffs. Which is why I ended up training in this map for the last 5 levels on this character, even though it is slightly worse EXP than VC3, because this is pretty much the only map that I found past 225 that has good flow to the training. But it cannot make use of Frenzy because Dark Knight has no map control. The rotation is pretty simple. You're just jumping in a circle, dropping Radiant Evil on the side you're passing through to get to the other side. And if it ever looks like I'm just stopping and standing still instead of flash jumping again, that's because I have high ping, and Dark Knight has some very big problems with high ping. If your Radiant Evil's on cooldown, drop your Will Skill or Urda Shower, either one works, and just keep jumping on through. It's not good, I'm not gonna lie, it's not good. If you want good EXP on Dark Knight, you just have to do a lot of cooldown watching. You pretty much have to play this class like a Shadower, and pretty much spend your entire life watching cooldowns, and lining them up with the most pumps possible to get the best EXP, but that is one of the worst ways of training in this entire game for me. I love rotations, I hate just cooldown watching and spamming. But you could do that, and it's not good, it really is not. I was averaging 10% per hour from 240 to 250. It was slow. It wasn't dual blade slow because it was strong enough that I could actually train in Moonbridge, thank Christ, but it was slow, and it wasn't fun. Like, Dark Knight is, oof, it has not aged well, at least not for actually training with Frenzied Spawn, or trying to maximize your EXP gains. I feel like doing Bishop and Dark Knight back to back is kind of making me biased towards newer classes, because after doing Bishop and Dark Knight back to back, The explorers are really starting to show their age. Like, back when I did marksman, I kind of felt it, but I felt like maybe it was just marksman was just that bad. But really, these classes are a long ways from their last rebalancing, their last reworks that brought them back up to modernity. It's past time these classes get looked at for fixes. Like, let's just take Evil Eye into consideration real quick. This is a skill that is tied to your main mobbing skill for 5th job. It is a buff. You have to recast this constantly. It does mob occasionally, but it's too weak to actually do anything. It has one passive that attacks for it, and it has a constantly refreshing buff. It is so dumb that these skills are not just passive. Evil Eye should be a passive. It should be a toggle hack, if you want it that way, but it shouldn't have a constantly refreshing buff. Everyone knows how bad those are if you've ever been in a party situation with someone using a constantly refreshing familiar. Constantly refreshing buffs eat inputs really, really bad, and it's compounded on if you have bad ping like I do. You drop so many inputs because this skill is just constantly refreshing. It lasts over a minute and a half, but every 10 seconds it refreshes the buff. It's so bad. And it's a vital skill. It's not like I can just not train with Evil Eye because I need Evil Eye for this. So it's just like, for anyone who's training Dark Knight with bad ping, just all I can say is don't put any points into the Evil Eye skills. It's so dumb. Because they give a lot of stats too. This gives me crit rate, which puts me at 100% crit once I min-maxed my points. But it also absolutely lags the hell out of me. If I were to train with my familiars on and Evil Eye, I'm dropping like every 5th input on this class, and it feels terrible to play. For the bossing on Dark Knight as well, it's like, Cyclone does not deserve a 3-minute cooldown. It really isn't that strong. Like, even if it had a 2-minute cooldown and it was more usable for mobbing, it wouldn't be that much stronger. It's a really nice skill to use, as it keeps healing you as you're doing damage, and it has a very good range to it, but at the same time, it's a long keydown skill that doesn't actually do tons and tons of damage. You get more damage out of casting Radiant Evil on top of Spear of Darkness. It's kind of like Dual Blade with Blades of Destiny and Blade Tornado doing the same total damage as Blade Tempest. It's effectively the same as Dual Blade. Like, they're pretty similar once you start looking at this. They both struggle extremely with their mobbing. Like, their main mobbing skills are trash. Dark Knight's at least has a better vertical range to it, but the horizontal reach of the skill, of the spear mobbing skill, not like little pointy daggers, but of the spear, is just as small as Blade Fury. It feels terrible to use. The bossing is kind of on the weekend too. Like, doing dojo, now this could be just because I'm lower stat than I am before, but I'm struggling to clear floor 44 in dojo as a Dark Knight. As a Mihail, I cleared floor 44 with ease. Like, it could just be the gear, but it also could just be like the burst window is really bad because of Calamity Cyclone. But at the same time, is Dark Knight really supposed to be weaker than Mihail, who's pretty much just the tankiest tanky boy in MapleStory? Or is he supposed to be an all-rounder? Because he feels like he's neither. He's not good at mobbing, he's not good at bossing. Sure, he can survive a lot, and you can kind of just ignore bosses at some point if you just die to them. It's like Dark Knight's gimmick at this point is Final Pact. Final Pact just makes it so you can ignore the entire game and just hold down Gungnir's Descent until the boss dies because you're fully invincible and you're stronger. You're tactically inting to get damage. But as a class, like, mobbing as a Dark Knight was miserable. To the point where I couldn't do it without streaming as a distraction. It got that bad. Like, the last 5 levels of Dark Knight, I literally had to like drag myself into a training area to do it because the rates aren't good, the rotations aren't good, the skills don't feel good, the lag is unbelievably obnoxious to deal with. And it's like, even with max EXP buffs, which at this point are getting hard for me to come by because Nexon hates Christmas and they're just never gonna give us Happyville or Shining Santa boxes, but that's a whole nother topic entirely. I feel like I'm wasting my time training as a Dark Knight. Like, it's sad to say, but that's true. I felt like I was wasting my time. It's like when I was finishing up Dual Blade, I felt like I was just wasting my time because almost every other class in the game can get better rates in the same maps, doing effectively the same thing, just better. Oh, Lord. Dark Knight was a struggle and a half to finish. I don't know how I feel. Like, before I played Dark Knight, pretty much everyone I talked to said, oh yeah, Dark Knight's the best mobbing of the Explorer Warriors. Those people were fucking lying. Like, Hero is a better mobber than this, by a country mile. Paladin's way better than this. So what does Dark Knight do that's unique or special? Just Final Pact? Is that really enough? And their new 5th job skill doesn't help their bossing all that much. It's a shield that does damage, which is nice, but at the same time it's not enough damage to compete with Hero. And it's not a mobbing skill, so it's not going to make their mobbing better than Hero. So why would you pick Dark Knight in 2020 or 2021 even? It's just like, the more I think about this class, the more I'm thinking like, holy crap, we need Red Part 2 Red Boogaloo ASAP. These Explorer classes are so feast or famine, it's depressing almost. Like, Dual Blade can't mob for shit. All it does well is bossing, and it does bossing extremely well. Hero can boss like a beast, and its mobbing is sort of okay. Paladin's bossing is really good for the supportive potential, and the mobbing is pretty okay. Dark Knight doesn't do either. He doesn't support, he's not a great DPS, and he can't mob well. At least not with Frenzy Spawn. With no spawn modifiers, he has good rotations, like watch Kobe train in KMS, in Labyrinth of Suffering. Dark Knight looks okay with no spawn modifiers, but if you're trying to get 250s as fast as possible, you're trying to maximize your rates, like I am. Dark Knight can't mob. It just cannot keep up. It has no map control. It has terrible mobbing skills. It's so heavily reliant on Spear of Darkness and Radiant Evil. Oh lord. It is literally the Warrior Dual Blade, but it can't boss. So it's... I feel bad. Like, I'm hating on Dark Knight so much, but at the same time, I literally can't see any good sides of this class at this point. I'd want to recommend it to new players because it is obscenely strong. Like, I'm barely pushing 20k stat. I barely have the Arcane Force to train in Moonbridge, but I'm still one-shotting a Moonbridge with ease. Like, the base damage is there, just the class isn't. The fun isn't there. At least for me, Dark Knight just is very, very underwhelming. It doesn't really do anything well. And that's pretty bad. Oh lord. But I'm done with Dark Knight. I'm so glad I'm done. I pushed 10 hours straight, no stopping, yesterday just to finish this class because I did not want to play Dark Knight for a single day longer. Dobby needed to be a free elf. But Dobby's a free elf now, and I have choices of better classes to play. For my next 250s, I'm looking at either Evan or Ron. Those are the two characters I have prepared and ready for haste. I don't know which one I'm going to choose just yet. I still have to go do a dojo run for the video, and I'm going to do a few more things on Dark Knight before I'm officially done with this character. But this character, I'm probably never coming back to it. Like, unless there's, again, like Red Patch 2 Red Boogaloo, where they just fully revamp or just like modernize all the explorers again, which they desperately, desperately need. I don't think I'm ever going to come back to Dark Knight. I did my time. and now I'm a free man. But as always with these videos, if you have any questions about Dark Knight, about my grind for 10k Legion, or my grind for all classes 250, as it really should be. 10k Legion is just a catchier title. I want to get all classes to 250 for these guides, because there is a lot of content that is just hard to find for some classes. I want there to be at least 1 or 2 videos for every class in the game, showing like pros and cons, in case someone's interested in an obscure class. Hopefully I didn't rag on this class too hard. I probably did. I feel bad, but at the same time, Dark Knight is just not good. But as always, if you have any questions, leave them down below in the comments. I'll make it a point to answer any and all questions on these videos, because I love talking about this game. I love answering your guys' questions, as long as I know the answer. If I don't, I'll point you in the right direction. And if you guys are looking for Dark Knight content that is a little less negative, absolutely check out Kobe, I Sling Guns on both YouTube and Twitch. Probably the best Dark Knight player that the GMS community has. He definitely has a love for this class that I do not. So hopefully you enjoy his content as well. And until the next video, I'll see you guys later.